Hi, my name is Hallie Barefoot, and I'm doing a presentation on interactions between Naegleria fowleri and freshwater environments. So Naegleria fowleri is a thermophilic protozoan which is primarily found in freshwater environments such as ponds, lakes, rivers, hot springs, poorly maintained swimming pools, and the soil. It was actually discovered in Australia in the 1960s by a man named Malcolm Fowler. There's 47 different species of Naegleria, but only Naegleria fowleri can cause pathogenic infections such as primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. PAM is the abbreviation for it. It can actually cause death within a few days. Naegleria fowleri exists in 3 different forms. There's a picture in the top right corner that actually shows the 3 different forms. The cyst, so it's kind of like the bacterial endospores when the conditions are unfavorable, like cold temperatures or whatever. It can actually transform into the cyst until things and conditions are right again for it to transform into the next form, which is a trophocyte. The trophocyte is the motile in the feeding stage, so this is the active one that will actually cause primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. This is the one that will kill you. It does reproduce through binary fission, and you can see in the picture that it has everything it needs to be essential and cause infections. The other stage is the flagellate. It's kind of like the cyst, but it can actually move around. And it's a non-feeding and non-replicating stage, but it can transport back to the trophocyte stage when conditions become favorable again, but they can move between either stage at any point in time. Understanding Naegleria fowleri from the start. So an infection with this amoeba begins with contaminated water after it gets into your nose. You can't get infected by swallowing it, only going through your nose. It's not cool, but the way it works is kind of cool. So over to the left, there's a picture of your nasal sinuses and your brain, and it shows the amoebas in your brain. So to begin, the amoeba has receptors that recognizes acetylcholine, which is naturally released from your presynaptic cell, which connects to your olfactory bulb. Your olfactory bulb is something that contributes to your sense of smell and your olfactory nerves, which is one of the nerves in your face. So what happens is the amoeba will actually surpass a lot of the things in your immune system when it's going through your nose. It doesn't get easily recognized. And so it follows the chain of chemicals coming from the cribriform plate, and once it arrives, it has to fight its way through. And if it does make it through is when, unfortunately, you become infected. Things that will happen is your body will run a fever, which actually doesn't help because they do thrive in heat so well. And once it does start attacking your brain, it can shut down your brainstem, which will cause swelling of the brain. Your breathing will stop and will eventually cause death. PAM is difficult to diagnose because it takes a lot of time to diagnose the symptoms, and they can look like other things, and really hard to tell basically up until death. Some of the symptoms include severe headaches, fever, nausea. Some of the later ones include like stiff neck, vomiting, seizures, mental confusion, and even a coma. The amoeba's release of toxic molecules is what produces the swelling in the brain and is what will cause death in human beings. The average span of time for death is 5 days. To back it up on the last slide, I ran out of time on the last slide. So when it does reach your brain and starts attacking your brain, everything your immune system has to offer is starting to get flooded at it. And one of the things that happen is natural killer cells will try to attack it. And what happens is they will explode themselves to kill the amoebas. And what happens is their cell matter will actually kill your brain cells as well, unfortunately. But how to test and confirm for Naegleria fowleri. So over on the left is a picture of a patient's cerebrospinal fluid who is infected with PAM. You can see the arrows pointing to the amoebas in his spinal fluid. So primary amoebic meningoencephalitis can be confirmed with multiple different tests. They're actually offered by the CDC, so once you get a sample done, it is shipped off to the CDC where they complete these tests. One of them is the polymerase chain reaction test, and it detects the Naegleria fowleri in the patient's cerebrospinal fluid or tissue. Another one is the immunohistochemical test, an indirect immunofluorescent test. They're staining tests that use the antibodies against them to detect the amoeba. And the last one is just direct visualization underneath a microscope, which is what's being done on the left in the picture. One of the tips to identify them, though, is to avoid using a gram stain because it can be destroyed during a heat fixation. Cases of Naegleria fowleri in humans. When I was researching this, I also found that animals can get infected with Naegleria fowleri amoebas, but there isn't enough sufficient research on it to really say that it's been found as a case. So while the parasite is very common, like in the waters, the infections are rare. There's only been 381 confirmed cases worldwide between 1937 and 2018 due to being a rare disease. About only 7% of those numbers have been known survivors, and within that time, it was because of extensive treatment and early diagnosis. Having the right people on your team as well that can actually recognize it. Patient education and education in your hospitals is one of the best ways to have an early diagnosis. The CDC claims that there's less than 10 cases in the U.S. every year, but if you look on the map to the left, it shows how many cases there have been worldwide since 1937, and you can see how dark the U.S. is with 156 cases compared to the next highest number, I think, is 41. So it's a lot more than other areas of the world. According to the CDC, cases are way more common in summer months and in younger boys. Kind of like the boys will be boys term. Boys are more known to play rougher in water and dig around in the sediment and just play rougher in the water, and they've found that because of that reason, boys are more likely to get the amoebas in their nose. And other countries that have been documented with these cases include like Pakistan, Mexico, Australia, India, things like that. Oh no, abiotic factors that affect the distribution of Naegleria fowleri. One being temperature. There are different strains that are more thermophilic than others, and some can grow in up to 45 degrees Celsius. Oxygen. They actually don't need a lot of oxygen to survive, which is why they thrive in high temperature environments. There was actually laboratory tests done to show this, and what they did is they compared it to other strains such as Naegleria gruberi, which consumed a lot more sodium than Naegleria fowleri. Due to this, it led researchers to believe that the lower oxygen demand gave the Naegleria fowleri the ability to thrive in the heated waters where there's not a lot of oxygen. Salinity. Naegleria fowleri has not been found in marine water because it becomes immobilized in the salt water, while it does love being in the sediment though. And nutrient availability. Glucose, salts, metals, especially iron, are the typical diet of the brain-eating amoebas, and this refers back to the 3 different stages, such as the cyst, tryphozoite, and the flagellate, and this is because, again, they can revert back to each form depending on the conditions, such as having the correct nutrients. There are multiple things you can do to prevent your risk of infection. Number 1, and the most important, being just holding your nose or wearing a nose clip when you do anything, whether it's diving, jumping, either swimming in freshwater environments. especially in the bathtub as well. Don't dig in the shallow water because the amoeba is likely to live in the sediment. Use distilled or boiled tap water when rinsing your nose, using filters labeled NSF 53 or 58, and the exact size is on there from the Cleveland Clinic, which is what they recommend. Another thing I didn't put on there, just when having little kids, again, just making sure that they're being careful with what they're doing in the water when they're playing. Treatment, so the most common medication to treat primary amoebic meningoencephalitis is amphotericin B. Some survivors in North America were treated with different combinations of drugs that included the amphotericin, rifampin, fluconazole, and miltefosine. In cases where the patients recovered quickly or a lot better than others, they received an early diagnosis and treatment. They also did cool the body temperature below normal to treat the brain swelling. Conclusion and future directions. Water activities are definitely a go-to for all ages to relax and cool off during the summer. While being very rare and cases being extremely low, people can still contract the waterborne illnesses without knowing the risk. One of the parasites being Naegleria fowleri, again often called the brain-eating amoeba. Naegleria fowleri is a single-celled organism which thrives in the warm water, fresh environments like lakes, ponds, and it feeds on the bacteria in the water. Once you get infected, the protozoa feeds on your brain and can cause death almost within a few days. Wearing nose clips and swimming above the fresh water will help prevent infection, and I think better treatment and testing the waters can help eliminate infections altogether. And here is my references slide. Thank you. Bye.